Let's study the relation between bond prices and interest rates. In economic theories, getting a loan and issuing a bond are considered the same thing. Similarly, giving a loan and buying a bond are considered the same. Let me explain this in details with the help of a mascot character of this course, James. So James says, "Can I borrow £800? I will repay £1,000 in 1 year." This woman is an investor, okay? Now, what is the interest rate implied by this borrowing contract? We already did this computation in the last class. If you borrow £800 to repay £1,000 in 1 year, the implied interest rate is 25% per year. We did this in the last class. Now, think of a slightly different situation in which James says the following. "Hey, will you buy this bond for £800? Let's see what it says. I, James, will pay £1,000 to the owner of this paper in 1 year. 1st of December 2007. James. There should be signature here. Now, if you compare these two scenarios, what's going on is very similar. In both cases, James is borrowing £800 from the investor, and in 1 year he's supposed to repay £1,000 to her. In the former scenario, James is getting a loan and the investor is providing the loan. In the latter scenario, James is issuing a bond and the investor is buying a bond. But in both cases, James is borrowing £800 from the investor with some interest. Okay? Now, suppose the investor says, "No, I won't. I won't buy your bond for £800. Make it $750 and I'll buy it." Now, what is the interest rate implied by that price? We did this computation also in the last class. If you borrow £750 today, and you must repay £1,000 in 1 year, that means that the interest rate you face is higher, 33% per year. This is very important point. You must repay £1,000 in 1 year. What is the amount you borrowed? If it's £800, then the interest rate you face is 25%. If £750, then the interest rate you face is 33%. This is very important point. And this is the relation between bond price and interest rate. Suppose you issue a bond with face value £1,000, so you must repay £1,000 once the maturity arrives. If this bond is sold for high price, let's say $9.99, that means that you have very low interest rate because you borrow £999 and you repay only £1,000. The interest rate is very low. But if the same bond is sold for low price, such as £650, that means you have very high interest rate. You borrowed only £650 and you have to repay £1,000. That's a very high interest rate. Because of this reason, the price of a bond going up is equivalent to the implied interest rate of the bond going down, or yield of the bond going down. And the price of a bond going down is equivalent to the implied interest rate or yield of the bond going up. It is important that you understand that these two are equivalent, not one causing the other. It's two sides of the same coin. It's two different ways of mentioning one phenomenon. Let's solve one exercise. The following is a part of a newspaper article in November 2012. The prospects for the euro and the eurozone remain uncertain. But recent events at the European Central Bank in Germany and in global financial markets make it worth considering a favorable scenario for the common currency's future. The ECB has promised to 1. Italian and Spanish sovereign bonds to keep their interest rates 2. Provided these countries ask for lines of credit from the European Stability Mechanism and adhere to agreed fiscal reforms. Question. Select a correct pair of words to fill in the above blanks. You can pause here and think for a minute. 2012 was the European sovereign crisis, in which the price of bonds issued by the governments of GIPS countries, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Portugal, and Spain, dropped significantly. So these countries were in trouble. At that time, the aim of the European Central Bank was to push up the price of these countries' government bonds. Why? Because being able to sell bonds for a high price means that being able to borrow money with relatively low interest rate. If you forgot, go back to that story of James. So, the ECB's aim was to keep the interest rates these countries faced low. So the word for the second blank is down. Now, for that purpose, what should the ECB do? Well, the price can be raised if a lot of demand is created. In other words, the ECB should buy lots of government bonds issued by these countries. So the word for the first blank is buy. The answer is B.